Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Joseph Clough, and this is episode 849. And in today's episode, we're going to go into the subject as to why beliefs, including emotions, and therefore limiting beliefs and negative emotions, why they don't actually disappear. So I thought I'd go into this subject just as a slight refresher and or a reminder, and or if you're new here, just to kind of understand why our brain, why our subconscious or our unconscious continues to run something that is limiting. Because it doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense as to why our brain would be doing something that causes us pain. Like, we know, if I don't believe I'm good enough, if I don't believe I'm worthy, if I believe I'm not deserving or capable or lovable, or money's a bad thing, or relationships are bad, and all the limiting things and thoughts and ideas, we know the consequence of that. We don't always know the deeper consequence. Because we live in the moment. But if you would think about it, well, if I keep this limited belief for the rest of my life, now suddenly that consequence is far more severe and bigger, right? Because it's not just now, it's for the rest of our life. So we unconsciously are running them for certain reasons. Same thing with negative emotions. For example, anger, sadness, fear, guilt, hurt, shame, and any other. I like to think they're like the main ones, which kind of like painting, you kind of put them together and it creates like frustration or other emotions. But once again, we know logically that anger is not good for the body. They've done research into this, that anger leads to more issues with the heart. They've done studies where lots of like shame and guilt lowers the healing energy because we don't deserve to be healthy, right? If I have shame or that guilt, my body's not going to want to be able to heal itself as much, right? Because it's a lower energy. It's not like I deserve to be healthy compared to I feel really guilty as a person. The energy level is totally different. So let's get into the reasons as to, because we now know why it's important to know this, right? We know, look, limiting beliefs, negative emotions, we know logically are not serving us to our highest good, or having deep meaning relationships, or a loving sense within yourself, like that wholeness and that beingness, which I think we all want to strive for, a level of peace. I know I do anyway. And we now got to just go into, okay, why is something such as the unconscious mind and the subconscious mind, I just use them interchangeably, why would that be happening? Why would our physiological, our biological body be running these? Well, specifically, it'll always go down to one thing, just one, which is good news, because if it was many things, we'd have to like attack all of the many things. But ultimately, a negative belief or a limiting belief or a negative emotion is only there for one reason. And that's just protection. That's all it's trying to do. I promise you that. Which kind of throws up an interesting thought or perspective that we've got to consider, because the one thing what we hate about ourselves, which could be, or we could have many things, but if we dislike ourselves, or we hate our issue, like I'm not good enough and I hate the experience, but the thing which is running it is trying to protect us, which then creates a deeper conflict because you're hating your protector, although it's not really protecting you. Like, we know it's not fulfilling the job, or it's not completing the job at hand, but the initial reason behind, in my opinion, every limiting belief, behind every negative emotion, always comes down to protection. always unconsciously trying to keep you safe in some way. Now, knowing that will have to mean that we've got to consciously change as well. Like change our behavior and our relationship to the thing that we've been disliking. Because if we're disliking the thing which is protecting us, it's going to create a deeper conflict, in my opinion. So that reframe of going, okay, this thing that I hate or I dislike or has caused all this trouble for me, the bad relationship, the bad money, the lack of career progression, the self-sabotage, all the things, even though it's doing that, deep down, it's trying to protect. And I'm emphasizing trying because it doesn't really do that to the full degree. It might do it initially. It might cause you to play small. It might cause you to stay in your comfort zone. It may cause you to not go for the thing you want in case what? Think about that. If I believe I'm not good enough, I might fail. I might get hurt. I might get taken advantage of. I might lose something. I might look silly, right? So my unconscious mind's going, I do not want you to fail or be rejected or to not get, or I don't want you to get hurt. So it's going to immediately put this initial protection mechanism, just like, I'm going to try to protect you, whatever it is, so I can play in this comfort zone. Because anything beyond that is uncomfortable. And therefore it's going to keep me where I am. So think about it as like an anxiety. It's like a superhero is trying to protect you in every single moment by thinking of all the negative consequences. Of course, it's not making us feel good because we're feeling anxious. Even if we think of things like anger, what is the intention behind anger? Well, it's going to be protection, but for what reason? Maybe that someone's crossed your boundaries, so we get angry. It might be inappropriate, it might be explosive, it might be unwarranted, but it's trying to keep you safe. Same thing, I mean, the emotion side of fear, that's easy, right? Because we know if we feel fear, we feel unsafe, so therefore the fear is to try to protect us. If we think of things like being hurt, it's very much similar to being like the anger, where maybe our boundaries are being crossed, so we feel this hurt, we keep it here. And as I said about shame and say guilt, it's so we don't do something bad again. Like unconsciously, I don't want you to do something which will get you hurt again or make you feel bad about yourself. So if I hold this guilt, it will make me not do it. Right? It'll make me kind of stop me from doing that so-called bad thing. So now we understand why our unconscious mind does this. Where it be, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not capable, I'm not lovable, or the anger, sadness, fear, guilt, grief, and hurt, all of those emotions, we know that initially the intent is to try to protect you, but it doesn't really fulfill the end outcome. So then if we go back just historically throughout your life, when did, if you were to know, something like that belief come into existence? Because you don't come into this world with that belief. Depending on our belief systems, like maybe it's we can make beliefs maybe in the womb and things like that. Maybe people believe in past life and karma and all those things. But let's just kind of break it down simplistically. Like when you come into this world, when do you think that actually happened? Like maybe you had lots of negative feelings and thoughts, and then you came up with the conclusion, oh, that must mean I'm not good enough. Maybe the counter to that would be one big event, or what we perceived as a big event because we were very, very young when it happened, to then go, that's why I'm not good enough. I've told this story I don't know how many hundreds of times, but when I was growing up, I never felt confident. I was always so shy. I promise you, I used to feel dread every day going to school. If I was going to school with a friend and they phoned up and said they were ill, I'll be like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this by myself? Like, it was that level of dread that I just almost felt sick that I didn't want to go to school either. So going on beyond that, being at school, the teacher made me stand up in front of everyone, and I didn't know this mathematical question. Now, in front of all my peers, I'm in front of an authoritative figure who, by the way, installed a lot of fear in most of the children there. That was just like the level of her energy. And being shy and unconfident, being in front of everyone, I could feel my legs kind of going to jelly. The panic and the anxiety rise up. All the attention on me because I was just saying nothing. And even I've kind of done the work there, so I don't really need to remember all the content. And probably because I've told it every X amount of times, I'm like kind of almost making up a new narrative in a way, weirdly, because the memories do that. We can distort things. But from my perspective, like, I was just stuck and frozen. You know, you have the fight and the flight. Well, I was in froze. I was just right there in that moment. And when they said, look, if you don't know this, you're not going to progress to the next level, because it was like in England, primary to secondary. So it was when I'm going to like the big school from what, like 11 to 16 years old. That was the next jump in England. And the teacher said I wouldn't be able to really make it. Or I generalized it in my head in that one big moment that must mean I'm not good enough. That one moment, I made a decision to go, all of this means I'm not good enough as a person, that I'm not capable. Just that, I mean, it was a big event, of course, but it was still that one event. So if you think about maybe in your past, maybe you've had one big event. Like, think about it as an adult now. I'm not like, well, it's not the hugest thing in the world. But as a kid, you take things so personally. It is your whole world when these events happen. And of course, we may have gone through far bigger than just that event. Like, because some people grow up with a lot of abuse and situations which are not very nice. So it's so easy for a child to go, well, that must mean I'm not fill in the blank, right? That's how the brain works. This means that. So this event, this emotion means I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. So maybe you've had an event in the past where you've gone through something. I call them the significant emotional events, SEE, that was a defining moment for you as a child. Now, even not as a child, this can still happen, right? It's just easier for it to happen because we didn't know anything different. Like, we didn't have the knowledge and the wisdom that we have now as an adult. But still, to this day, something could have happened last week or last month or last year, but it was so big. Like, for example, if someone had their business and then something happened and became bankrupt, but they identified their business and that was their thing, that can create a big limiting belief. Or maybe within a relationship and it broke down, or like a divorce or whatever it is, then we can go, well, that must mean I'm not fill in the blank. So although I say mostly for most people, a lot of these events can happen I always say between 0 and 7, because in sociology, that's the imprint ages. The next 7 years is the modeling, when we're modeling those in our life. So it's typical that we make those types of decisions, and I'm saying decisions, not conscious decisions. I don't think we consciously decide to be not worthy, but because of the extremity of the event, our unconscious mind makes a reaction decision, not a wise decision, not one with perspective or logic or understanding or rationale, an instant protective decision. So it decides, that must mean this. But that can happen throughout our life. Sometimes the one thing that happened later then can create this narrative, like the same old things. Like if I now don't believe I'm good enough, well, the next relationship I go into may prove that narrative of that belief system that I have. Or if I've had one bad interview, and I didn't get the job, I then might go, well, maybe a couple of interviews, but let's just say it was one interview of some sort. I didn't get the job. Well, that must mean I'm not capable for this position. Maybe I don't deserve it. Then I'm going to go into the next interview with that narrative in my mind, thinking, well, this past evidence, these past experiences where I did not get the interview, well, of course, I'm going to think of the repeating of it, right? Because that's the only evidence I have. So think about that for a moment. All those events and those decisions is an evidence. It's just evidence for the unconscious mind. And the more you have that evidence, in other words, you repeat the same process or the same belief, it just reaffirms the evidence to stay. There's why you need to stay in your comfort zone. There's why you need to stay safe. So let's just consider that. In a way, this can be, for some people, if you're new, a bit of a breakthrough. Because you're kind of going, well, I wasn't always this way. My body did this for the intention, positive intention for protection. So I don't want to hate it anymore. Even within our program, someone posted the other day, they wanted to give their unconscious mind a hug, which I absolutely loved that, because we've now together, we've got to be the person that we needed back then for our unconscious mind. Because the chances are we didn't have that in our life. Or at least we didn't make it open enough for, if we did have that person, to get the help from that person. We kind of kept it on inside. So now we've got to be that person that we needed back then, because your unconscious mind, in a way, is stuck back then. Not necessarily stuck in the past, but stuck in the same belief system which was formulated back then. It's like you kept growing, but the limiting belief kind of maintained and kept on dragging its heels. So now we know the how, how it actually happened. We know that there's a positive intent there. And now we know we've got to change our relationship to our unconscious mind. We've got to be able to nurture it and develop it. And the same thing for emotions, limiting beliefs, negative emotions. They usually can be connected. I have a limiting belief and therefore I have an emotion. And some of the options that you can get into, some can be quick, some can be long, but that's why I loved hypnosis. And that's how I got into hypnosis 22 years ago, is because it caused me to let go of my limiting belief. And although I didn't have a horrific or bad traumatic past, it was still, I'm not good enough for me. So you can use things like hypnosis to be able to let go of these, because it is an unconscious process. And the reason why, in my opinion, hypnosis actually works is because we go back to the intention. It's trying to protect you. So if I were to offer up an alternative level of protection, which is actually really safe, because if we can get the unconscious mind to know that, look, I appreciate and love that you're genuinely trying to protect me, but I also want you to be aware of, it doesn't feel good right now. Feeling anxiety, fear, all those emotions I mentioned, or the consequences of a limiting belief, is not getting me the results. So therefore I feel bad and it's not biologically as good for me. So if you can explain that, and that's what I try to do, whether it be my main program, which comes with the custom tracks, or even on the free episodes. There's over 100 free hypnosis sessions. Just use them as much as you can with the intention, or you can use the paid app and things like that. But whatever it is, if you can provide the unconscious mind with an alternative level of safety and protection, which is better than the present. In other words, to learn a new way, biologically, your unconscious mind should, if you're working on the right root cause, of course, because I've talked about that a lot, you got to make sure you're working on the root cause, otherwise you're working on the symptom. But let's just say you are, therefore it will have to start to integrate or evolve itself to this new strategy because it's safer. It's why your unconscious mind is doing this. So one element I want us to get back to very quickly before we finish up this episode is to decide and declare you're not going to hate what you feel the most. You're not going to hate the core issue. Like, we can dislike it. We can dislike the result of it, but don't dislike or hate the reason behind it or the part of you which is running it, the unconscious mind, because that will just divide us. It really will. Because why would the unconscious mind want to change for someone who hates? It doesn't make sense. It's just like small separation. So decide and to make it your very best to start to nurture that part of you, express to that part of you. But look, there is this safer way. Because remember, your unconscious mind decided this when it didn't have all the information readily available. How many times have you consciously made silly mistakes? You look back and go, oh my goodness, I cannot believe I said or did this. We've all gone through that. So it's okay to give a bit of grace to your unconscious mind too. And that will start the reconnection. Remember, be the person that you needed back then. Be the person that your unconscious mind needs, which is someone who is going to do the work, who's going to like put the time in to educate the unconscious mind. Whether you invest in yourself or whether you do it for free, like I said, I've got all this free work. I promise you, I just really genuinely want to help people, and that's why it is all there for you. Where it be the app, where it be someone else, where it be another practitioner, where it be another podcast or another hypnotist, it doesn't really matter. As long as you start to go on that journey of nurturing and evolving that part of you, you will change. I believe biologically it will have to change, because the only reason why it's trying to do what it's doing is trying to protect. We just got to show it a different way. We've got to upgrade it. And funny enough, someone posted in the group of mine, is like, I talk about like the 1.0 of us and the 2.0 of us, and think about it like that. Like, you've been running the 1.0 version of you, and now we're kind of going into the 2.0, and we're talking like the person who said like 3.0 and so on like that. Like, think of it as a progression, that you're upgrading yourself, because when that means you're taking care of yourself, you're nurturing yourself, you're building yourself up. And finally, just to get back to the rapport of the unconscious mind, if you have been having a lot of hate or dislike to yourself, you wouldn't do that to your best friend or someone that you loved, whether it be a pet, a child, a partner. We would never say the things that we would say to ourselves. We would never say the things that we say to ourselves to that other person that we like or love. Well, I hope not anyway. So maybe it's time that we don't do that for ourselves. I know it's hard, because if we don't believe we're good enough or worthy, or we have these emotions, I'm not saying it's easy, but there is still a starting point. Sometimes you've got to empty out to fill yourself up with. You've got to go through that process and make the change that you want. So I hope you got value from this. And of course, feel free to download the app at freehypnosis.app. You get freehypnosis.app. You'll get all that free content in there. It's all there for you to use. You've got all the hypnosis library in day and night form. You've got the favoriting kind of things you can do it. You can download it. You can make it into a sleep version. There's morning meditations in there, 4-hour sessions in there. Just make sure, if you are listening to the app before bed, to any of the sleep ones, make sure it's fully buffered, or download it. Because if you just switch it to airplane mode, it's not going to do anything, right? It's just going to stop because it hasn't fully buffered. So just be mindful and go, I'm just gonna download it before I listen. Same thing with like the playlist creation, because that's another thing. If you're planning to listen to it throughout the night, download it, because if not, you've turned your phone to not be connected to the Wi-Fi or your data and things, so there's no way it can like pull in that information. And if you are getting value from my work, please go ahead and leave a review. I hope that it is helping you, and your words can make the difference. Sometimes people just go to the App Store, check out the reviews, and if there's a review in your words of how it's helped, maybe together we can start to kind of come together as a community. And like, even for example, this being broadcasted live on YouTube, and it's a very supportive group. And the same thing, like a review is a level of support of what I'm trying to do, if you believe in it. I hope that you do. But yeah, please go ahead and leave a review, and you can do that within the app. It just takes a few moments, but that few moments could actually help someone in an amazing way. So yeah, I look forward to speaking to you on a future episode, and the next episode will be another free hypnosis session on trusting yourself. I think if we start to trust ourselves, we're going to develop more certainty and more confidence to be able to make good decisions and go for what we want. So that will be out on the next episode. And then if you're a member of the app, you'll get the sleep version of that. And from there, who knows? We'll just keep on creating content and go from there. Many thanks and goodbye.